Alright. Hello and welcome to Talk Ag to Me, the podcast dedicated to improving ag literacy around the globe. I'm your host, Brennan Black, and today we are joined by Abby Prince.
Hi guys, I'm back again.
So we're here today for the part 2 of our ag myth-busting episode that we started last week. And unfortunately, Evan couldn't be here for this episode. He was supposed to be, but something came up. But it's alright, we're going to move on, get through the rest of this list as much as we can, and yeah, it's going to be a fun day. So, ready?
Alright, what do you want to start with?
I think, looking at the list, we have a lot on organic, so we should probably start there and kind of bounce around.
Alright.
So, let's go with kind of a common theme in here. There's a comment left by Eric Karen Kirsch and a couple other people I saw that said that organic is healthier. So let's start there. I think that'll be a good one.
I would really have to beg to differ. I definitely think that that's a myth. The problem with it is like they can still use pesticides, which I know that is also on your list. So, like
right.
Organic doesn't use pesticides. That is also a myth. So they just have to use organic pesticides, or they can use synthetic ones, but just in smaller amounts. So it's not necessarily like safer, if you want to say that. But health-wise, I mean, they should be roughly the same as conventional. I mean, they're the exact same product, just
right.
produced in a different way, but they're really not.
Right.
So, I mean, the nutritional content's not different. The only big difference is it's labeled organic and it's priced higher. Right.
No, exactly. I think a lot of the reason that people tend to think that organic is healthier is, for one, there's like this halo effect put around organic food, that because it's grown naturally, that it's automatically better for you for some reason. But if you think about it from like a kind of logical sense, growing food conventionally or using pesticides or antibiotics doesn't detract any nutritional value from the food itself. There's really not much of a way to do that. Mm-hmm. The kind of the thought I had is maybe processed foods are what they're thinking of. Once foods are processed, they lose a lot of nutritional content.
I could see that.
And they kind of just conflate the two without realizing there's a difference.
Yeah.
So that'd be my thought. Just people think that processed foods are non-organic, therefore not all non-organic food must be worse for you.
So they're just lumping everything into conventional and organic.
That'd be my thought. I'm not sure if that's true. I'll have to ask a consumer.
That would make sense though.
But that's kind of, whenever I heard this question, that was kind of my first train of thought was, well, maybe they don't realize what conventional food means.
Gotcha.
Okay, so that was kind of
So there's more categories than just organic and conventional.
Right. So yeah, you have your conventional, you have your processed foods, you have your deep fried everything. I mean, like there's a lot of
super all natural food, which is, I mean,
and even if you have organic food, if you don't prepare it properly, then it still loses nutritional content. If you like, if you heat your vegetables up too much, then you burn out all the nutrients out of them. And if you don't cook your meat to a certain temperature, then it loses nutritional. There's a lot of ways that even organic food can lose nutritional content. Mm-hmm. So it's not a matter of how the food is grown; it's a matter of how the food is prepared.
Gotcha.
Cool. So that's first myth busted. We're going to move on to a farmers are bad myths, because I kind of like these ones. These are kind of interesting.
Okay.
This one...
a little weird, but okay.
This one should be right up your alley. It's Dairy Causes Health Problems by Jamie Schultz. And kind of the thought I think that is going into this is the whole, like, since a lot of dairies have like corrals that are covered in mud and manure, people tend to think that that's causing health problems for the dairy cattle or the surrounding like workers that live on the dairy. Or
gotcha.
So that'd be kind of my thought.
Okay, so I could definitely go hit on both sides of that. So causing health problems is not like super like correct terminology, I guess.
Right.
I mean, workers go out there every single day. Cows don't do vacation.
Right.
Like, they still make milk on Christmas. Like workers still have to go in. Like you will see a dairy operating 24/7, 365 days a year. Mm-hmm. There's no break.
Right.
And so, I mean, you have people out there all day long, and I mean, milkers, like, they wear gloves, so then like they can't contract like any dirt into their hands.
Right.
I mean, they're working for 8 hours. So there's nothing going in their hands. They're not consuming any of the milk on the dairy, so there's no health risk there. Everybody has safety protocols. I mean, but that's with any industry, on any operation, not even just in the ag industry, but you have your standard operating procedures, which are SOPs. So you really got to look out for those. There's also personal protective equipment that that the employees wear, like they wear rubber boots, so then they're not contaminating their feet or their legs. Definitely full body clothing. If they have somebody coming in to visit a dairy that's never been on a dairy before, they give them biosecurity wear.
Yep.
I mean, it comes... I read an article in Horde's Dairyman saying that with biosecurity, you wear a Tyvek jumpsuit, a double liner, like rubber boots that like go over your shoes. So then like you can take both sets off.
Gotcha.
And then
There's
also like a cool helmet that you can wear to like make sure like nothing's getting in your face or anything.
Right.
And then like latex rubber gloves. And so like biosecurity reasons, like if you wear those and you go out onto a dairy, like you're not going to be at any risk for health. If you look at the feed or even the manure, I mean, it's just there, like it's not affecting you unless you eat it. It's not going to affect you in any way.
Definitely not recommend doing.
Oh, I would not recommend doing that either. So unless you're consuming what the cows are consuming or what's on the ground, there's no health risk out on the dairy.
Right. Yeah. No, exactly. And I kind of want to tie that into another comment that we had that was actually not related to the dairy industry at all, but I can still relate it to this idea.
Okay.
And that's so Ryan Tucker says that pesticides induce asthma. So I kind of want to broaden this into a larger scale of a question that we've actually answered before on the podcast, and that's that ag causes health problems. So asthma, valley fever, cancer, all these different things kind of get grouped together for being ag's fault because we're the ones that deal with the chemicals in the environment.
Right.
So I would kind of relate that to the dairy industry being the health problems that they're blaming the dairy industry for causing. It's kind of in that same, the boy cried wolf kind of situation where, just because they don't know what's causing the problem, they blame it on the dairy industry.
Right.
The dairy industry's got all this manure, so it must be producing all the problems. I mean, manure is bad for us, right? Probably. We don't know. But
as long as you don't eat it, it's okay.
Yeah. So I think that, and we'll go back into that pesticides induce asthma question again because I kind of want to touch on that one a little bit more. But when you said that, I kind of had that thought that people like to blame things on stuff they don't understand.
Don't eat the cow feed. Don't eat the manure. Don't try to lick the animal. Don't share saliva.
Don't drink out of their trough.
And don't drink out of the trough. Like, don't consume. I would also not recommend like drinking raw milk. I mean, some people do it, and if you were grown up on that, like, have at it.
Right.
I've always drinking pasteurized milk. I mean, just because that's what we buy from the grocery store. But it was produced on a dairy. It didn't just show up in the grocery store. But I mean, some people just go off of raw milk, but there's definitely a little bit higher of a risk because it hasn't been pasteurized. So if there is any dirt or some sort of bacteria that's in there, like you're definitely at higher risk for that. But pasteurization kills all that, so you have nothing to worry about.
Yeah, no, exactly. So that's kind of, So as far as the dairy industry is concerned, there are no health problems that can be directly linked to dairy farming. So myth busted. All right, let's go to an animal rights one because that's always fun.
Ooh, okay.
We're gonna go to one that I've actually heard a lot of, unfortunately, and that's that animal agriculture does not provide food or water for their animals. And Shauna Hamilton explains that this should be common sense, but obviously it isn't. So,
yikes.
Animal ag does not take care of their animals. Explain to me how that one works.
I don't understand.
I think that kind of the problem with this is that there's a logic question here that's not being asked, and that's that why would people who are making money off of animals living not let their animals live?
Yeah, I mean...
So, and not to be, like, condescending, but this is actually a thing that I've heard. Like, people were saying, ranchers abuse their animals all the time, and they beat their cattle and all that stuff. Like, I don't think you guys understand. If a steer is stressed, its meat is not going to taste good. That farmer's not going to get very much money.
Right.
If a dairy cow is stressed, she's not going to make as much milk, and that farmer's not going to make as much money.
If you look at a dairy, those cows are treated like queens.
They are.
Literally like royalty. They get the best bedding. Their feed is super high quality. They have these really cool fancy misters. So you know how like if when you were little like you played soccer and like you had the little fan that had the little like mister
and that was
clicker
like luxury.
Thing? That was the thing. Okay, they have the same thing for cows. They have fans in their barns. They have these really cool misters that like cool them off. They love going to get milked, especially like in the rotary parlor.
Yep.
It just goes around in a circle. It looks like a carousel.
It looks like so much fun.
And they ride it, and they think it's so cool. They don't even want to get off of it.
Yeah, a lot of cows will, like, fight you to stay on. You have to kind of, like, push them off, like, okay, no, you gotta go now.
No, those
like,
ladies
let me go around again.
are treated like royalty, and, I mean, yeah, they produce milk in return. So that's why the farmer, they're like, yeah, we want to give you the best quality water, feed, living. I mean, why wouldn't you?
Which we take their milk to help them too. Like, we're not taking their milk as like payment for them living there. No. Their milk is a luxury to them as well. Like, they don't want to carry that around. That's heavy and burdensome. Like, give us the milk and we'll treat you like a queen.
It's really uncomfortable if you leave them not milked.
Right.
Like, they have to be milked at least twice a day. A lot of farmers actually milk them 3 times a day to get more milk out of them. But it's on purpose. Like, we have to milk them.
If a cow goes a day or 2 without getting milked, it's terrible. Like,
it's awful.
It's just, like, she's so miserable. Like, it's just, it's kind of...
I mean, imagine, like, a human female. Like, like, lactating and not being able to lactate. Like, that's gotta be super uncomfortable.
Isn't there, like, some kind of toxicity with that? I can't remember exactly. I
there might be.
But I thought I heard about that somewhere where there's, like, lactation toxicity or something.
We have to milk them. It's just our job.
But yeah, as far as going back to the whole animal ag doesn't provide food or water for their animals, their entire livelihood is based off of the animals surviving and thriving, so it doesn't make sense that we wouldn't feed or water.
You could go out to any operation and you will see feed on the floor ready for them to eat.
And it's not like we feed them like they only get fed, in the morning and that's it for the whole day. Like, they have free access to food all the time. Mm-hmm. And that's like it's pretty rare you see an animal that doesn't have feed near it somewhere.
Yeah, like one of our Dairy Bowl questions is like for lactating cows, they have access to feed 18 to 20 out of the 24 hours a day.
Right.
And those other 4 hours, 6 hours or so, they're either walking around and like socializing with other animals, or they're being milked, or they're asleep.
Yeah, where they're being milked. Yeah.
And so, I mean, other than that, they will always have feed in front of them.
Right. It's just like, and the water troughs are completely efficient, and for the most part, they're clean. They have workers out there cleaning the troughs, so they have clean and fresh water for them all the time, and they have float systems in there, so the water's constantly being replaced. That way, it's always clean and fresh. And then they like you were saying, they have like the misters going on, so the animals are not only getting cleaned off to a degree, but they're being cooled down, so they're not having to worry about heat exhaustion. And the feed is like, they eat better diets than I do. Like, their diets are so heavily concentrated and
they're balanced.
And they're incredibly
they're not
balanced.
just eating like junk food all day long.
No.
Like some of the kids that we see in school and stuff.
Yeah, no, they're not getting cheeses. They're getting like full on, like, you get like a 30% ration of this, you get a 40% ration of this, you get a 10% ration of this. Like, they have like a full on balanced diet.
And they eat it every day.
And they eat it every day, and
it's consistent. They cows especially. I'm not sure about other animals, but I would assume this as well.
For most animals,
consistency.
Right. If you switch up their feed, it messes them up. They gotta have their same feed.
They don't like it at all.
No. So yeah, it's a little bit. I don't understand how that got started. The animal agriculture doesn't feed or water their animals. Because it kind of seems like that'd be like the first
Just go out
step.
To any operation and say, hey, I just want to make sure like you're feeding your animals.
Feeding, right?
And then the farmer's going to go, do you see to your left right there? All that stuff right there? Yeah, that's feed.
See that? Yeah. So I actually want to tie this one into another comment I have on the animal rights section.
Okay.
Just because it ties into it, I just saw it and forgot about it.
Okay.
Seeing ribs equals starving, and this was another one by Jamie Schultz. And this ties into that same idea. I think this is kind of the origin of people thinking that animals aren't being fed.
Gotcha.
Is because they see the ribs on them.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Like, yeah, I guess if you see ribs on a human. But, so this is kind of, I want to tie this back kind of comparing, like, beef and dairy.
Right.
This is one of the easiest examples of seeing ribs.
Yep.
So beef cows, you want them square, you want them big.
Yep.
That's just the way you want them.
If you see ribs, there's an issue. Like, they gotta be fat. Like,
you have a serious issue. Dairy, however, like, this is probably one of the biggest differences. These animals are built to be lean and strong and muscular.
Right, because they gotta carry babies around all the time.
And you want to see their ribs.
Right.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Because if you don't see their ribs, they are way too fat.
Yep. That's
and you're gonna have other problems. That's gonna lead to fatty liver. It's gonna lead to ketosis.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just gonna be really bad. So. Yeah, definitely between beef and dairy, that's one of the biggest differences. Beef, you want fat animal, you don't want to see ribs. Dairy, you need to see the ribs.
Right. And kind of the funniest example with that is, so whenever I first started showing in high school, I was a freshman, I had my first year and everything. Sophomore year, I decided to do dairy judging.
Ooh,
and that was my first year.
That's a big difference.
That was my first year ever doing dairy judging, and I'd always been around dairy cows, so I was like, I know what a dairy cow should look like. I should be fine. I get in there, And I did it with Chris Souza, and he was telling me, he's like, so my mom told me to do dairy judging, basically judge it like you would judge a steer, and then do the opposite. And
I've been told that before.
And I was like, okay, well, I'll try that. And I got every placement right perfectly, because I would judge it like I would judge a steer. I'd be like, okay, so what's the opposite of what I'd look for in a steer? It's skinny, it's tall, it's not built like a, freaking brick house. I'm like, okay, that one should be first. I'm like, yes, you got it. And I was like, yes, I understand how dairy cows are supposed to look, because they don't look like beef cows at all. And it's true, though. Like, people always, like, they'll pass by dairies and they're like, oh, those cows are so skinny. I'm like, no, you don't get it. They cannot be fat.
They're built.
Right. We can't let them be fat. It's bad for them. Just like you don't want a human to be overweight, you don't want a cow to be overweight.
It's exactly like a human.
Right.
Once you hit a certain point, you are obese, and it's not good for you.
And it has to, because I get that question a lot, too. Like, okay, why is it okay to have a beef cow fat and not a dairy cow? Because they're built differently.
And they're made for different purposes. That's the key point right there.
Because there's like this whole, so there's a I used to, when I was in nutrition, I knew all this stuff, like the BMI and all that kind of stuff, like how your body's built determines how much weight you can handle.
Right.
Before you reach a certain like threshold to a point where you're unhealthy.
Yeah.
And so it kind of works the same way with livestock.
Mm-hmm.
So for different frames, for different frame sizes and for different structures, you have different thresholds you can cross for what weight they can be and how much fat they can have on their body.
Right.
So for beef cows, they have entirely different bone structures and skeletons than a dairy cow does. Therefore, they can handle weight in different distributions and they can handle fat in different distributions.
Yeah.
So dairy cows, like you said, are supposed to be leaner. They have to have more of an ability to hold not only a baby but milk and be able to walk like that. So they have to have more of a lean structure so they don't need fat. Whereas beef cows, all they're doing all day is getting fat and popping out babies. So we're not trying to milk them. They don't have to walk very far. They're just there. So they can get fat as they want.
They're eating all that they can.
Yeah. So that we just turn them out to pasture and tell them to eat as much as they want and just pick them up whenever they're ready to go to the slaughterhouse, because that's all we need them for.
Right.
So there's just a little bit, if you want to relate it to a human's diet, that's how you relate it to a human's diet. Like, don't think about it as skinny and skinny ribs is bad just because it's bad on a human. Think about the proportion of their diet to their body ratio. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the best way to think about that. But anyways, got a little bit deep into that one, but that's okay. Let's go into...
Good to know, though.
It is very good to know. Let's go back into organic, because that one's one that we have a lot of. We have to kind of start breaking down. So a couple of the different comments I'm seeing here that are pretty, like, commonly worded is that we already covered, like, the organic livestock is healthier, organic food is healthier, organic food is better for you. But there is one that says all organic farming is sustainable.
Ooh.
So that is an interesting one to cover, because it's definitely... The problem I have with that statement, and the problem I have with that word sustainable, is it's so subjective. Nobody can ever define what sustainable is supposed to mean.
That's what I was just going to say. Nobody knows what the definition of sustainable is, and it's different for every sector of at least the United States, and definitely for the world.
Right.
I mean, you could be sustainable in Tulare, but it's going to be... The word sustainable is going to be different when you look at Texas.
Right.
It's all different.
It's all subjective, and it's all circumstantial on the environment, on the population, on the resources.
Right.
And so, because I had that problem a lot when I was talking to people, they would say, organic farming is more sustainable. Sustainable in what way? Is it more sustainable environmentally? Well, that's arguable. Is it more sustainable financially? Definitely not.
Yeah.
Is it more sustainable economically in terms of how we're going to feed the world? Definitely not. There's such a gray area in what's supposed to be considered sustainable. Because I would think of sustainable as being able to sustain a population that's supposed to live off of it.
That's what I would, yeah.
But that's not how people think of sustainable. They think of it environmentally or economically, or if it can sustain itself, if the farm can keep itself alive.
Or sustain other people, that it's healthier.
Right. So there's too many, like, vague definitions of sustainable to really say that for sure. Mm-hmm. But based off of the definition of sustainable that I most commonly see as maybe not the right one, but the one that's most commonly used in terms of being sustainable enough to feed the population, the purpose of agriculture.
Right.
Sustainable in relation to what its job is. Mm-hmm. Organic is severely less sustainable than conventional.
I agree.
And so that's kind of my take. I'm not sure if you have any other...
Yeah, I definitely can see that as well. Again, back to the dairy industry, because that's what I know and that's what I love.
Right.
If you look at an organic dairy farm, those cows have to be on pasture at least 120 days a year. depending on how big your operation is, you're going to need a lot of pasture for however many cows to be out there for more than 120 days.
Right.
And looking at California, like, they're so big on organic, but all these people are moving here and taking away agricultural land.
Yeah.
Then these people can't farm organically. I mean, it's logical, right? I mean, all these houses are being built. I mean, I've said this before in a podcast, probably a long time ago when we talked about the dairy industry a little bit. Down south in Chino, all those houses are absolutely massive. They're huge, and all these families are just moving in because they love California weather.
Right.
So do these cows.
Yep.
But 20 years ago, it was full of dairies, and they have no idea what their house is sitting on top of.
Yep.
You got 8 inches of dirt, and then there was a dairy.
Right. No, it's incredible how fast urban sprawl is spreading.
It's ridiculous.
It's terrifying.
And so organic is definitely not becoming very sustainable because of that reason. There's so much less land because farming organically, you got to have the land to do it.
Yep.
And based on that, you have fewer animals, which also means you're producing less food.
Yep.
Producing less for the population that is now taking more of your land. And it's just, it's a whole cycle. It's a snowball.
Right.
Once one thing starts, another thing stops, and it just keeps cycling like that.
Right. And on top of that, to kind of use an example from the grass-fed beef side of agriculture, which we haven't really talked about a whole lot yet, but it's something that I've been doing a lot of research on lately because it's a rapidly growing trend in the markets, and it's something that I don't disagree with. I don't think grass-fed beef is bad or anything, but to say the grass-fed beef is the way to raise beef is just sorely mistaken.
Yeah.
And I had a conversation at a grass-fed beef event that I spoke at. I was teaching them about the process of how it goes from calf to plate in a grass-fed operation versus a conventional one. I had a lot of people asking me, if I prefer grass or grain-fed beef, which I had tried very hard not to answer, honestly. Not that I was lying, but I was like, it's up to your personal opinion. Anyways, back to the topic. The problem I was seeing was a lot of these people thought that grass-fed beef was better for growing. They thought that grass-fed beef was more efficient, and I was kind of confused as to why they thought that, because
so wrong.
A grass-fed steer and a grain-fed steer take vastly different amounts of time to grow to finish.
Yes.
So a grain-fed steer takes about 1.5 years to reach maximum size for slaughter.
Right.
Usually they slaughter them even before that. It's usually about 1 year, and then they slaughter them. But 1.5 years is about max. They're going to reach like 1,300, 1,400 pounds, and they're ready to go. Yeah. They usually wait until like 1,100, and then they take them. Mm-hmm. For grass-fed beef, it takes 3 years. It takes twice that amount of time to get the exact same weight.
3 years?
3 years.
Okay, I knew the first one, but grass-fed?
Grass-fed takes 3 years for one steer to reach maximum weight to slaughter.
Wow.
So I was at this event, and it was a good friend of mine. You know Jeff Wilbur.
Yes.
He has these grass-fed British whites, which I love British whites as a breed. So I was like super into it. He's like, hey, you want to come see my British whites? I was like, yes, please. I came over and he showed me the whole operation. He was explaining to me what he was doing, and he's got it down to a point where it's sustainable for him.
That's good. But
he was explaining it to me, and I was like, how does that even work? Like, if we were feeding the world off of just grass-fed, we would have no beef. Because he was showing me what steers he's going to send to slaughter. He's supposed to send 3 steers to slaughter the next week. And I was like, okay. So he shows me the steers. And these are like pretty big steers. And I was like, oh, these guys are cool looking. And so I was checking them out. I was like, how much do they weigh? He's like, they're 1,300 pounds. Like, okay, so they're market ready. He's like, yeah. And I was like, what, how old are these guys? Like a year and a half? And he's like, no, these are 3 years old. I was like,
holy cow.
They're barely ready now. And he's like, that's how long it takes to get steers ready. And I was like, oh my God. Which is like, for the market, that's fine. But to feed the world, that's not going to cut it. Mm-mm. And so that was kind of my realization when it came to
That's very eye-opening. I had no idea that statistic.
Yeah. So,
I knew it would take longer, but not twice as long.
And it might be a little bit distorted. Maybe he had them for a little bit longer for some, like maybe he was holding out for this event. But I know it takes a significant amount longer. It's close to twice the amount of time for grass-fed. Wow. Just because grain-fed makes them grow so much faster. Grass-fed, they're grazing nonstop. They get no grain. Yeah. So they have no way of escalating that. Because grain-fed makes them like just grow at an exponential rate. Right. Grass-fed, they're growing like slower, and like they'll start hitting like a growth spurt, and then they'll slow down again, and it just kind of plateaus for a while. And you see that with grain fed too. It happens like they'll start off kind of a slow grower, then they'll get really fast and they'll grow kind of slow. Because it's grain fed, that spurt is a lot more impactful, and the slow down is a lot slower, so you don't have to worry about losing as much weight gain. Whereas grass fed, it does not have that exponential jump.
Right.
But anyways, back to the topic. So yeah, organic farming is not more sustainable in that definition of the word. But so that knocks off like 3 of our organic lists. It's a lot of them are unsustainable.
I know this isn't on your list, but I was kind of thinking about this last week. So the largest chicken facility in the world is in Wasco, down south.
Foster Farms, correct.
In California.
Yep.
So my dad and I, we actually got to visit there when it was in construction. And we kind of walked around a little bit. I mean, we didn't get to walk inside because it is a closed-off facility, but we get to like walk around and see the outside of the buildings,
right? And
get to talk to some of the construction workers and some of the people that are going to be running the business, kind of about their operation. Mm-hmm. So their plan at that point was to have 14 million chickens in their facility at one time, so making it the world's largest like chicken facility.
Wow!
And so they are named cage-free eggs.
Right.
So I see, I've heard a lot of people say, oh, cage-free eggs, like these chickens aren't in their little cages, they're not just like confined to this small space, they can just run around and be free, because they're picturing a cute little red barn and they have chickens like running in the grass.
Right.
It's just not how that works. So I was kind of talking to my dad about it, and I was like, so they're just slapping this cage-free eggs on the package label, and people just believe it, that these chickens are just running wild and free. But these facilities are just giant buildings. Like they look like a giant cage. I mean, there's solid walls all the way around.
Right.
But realistically, that's the concept of it. They're just all living in a giant cage. So, and if these chickens, there was at one point that, so they have like feed and water in this building, and then they have a conveyor that takes all the manure out. Mm-hmm. Well, at one point, some of the little chicks got onto the conveyor and went out of the facility, and once that happened, they could no longer re-enter the facility.
Right, because they're biohazards.
They were done. So that's just also something to keep in mind, that if you're looking to buy cage-free eggs, just, I mean, you could even drive by like the business in Wasco, and you just see they're just big white buildings, and they have chickens living in there.
They're just bigger cages.
They're just giant cages. And so, I mean, I know it's kind of hard like to conceptualize that, but if you're really just buying cage-free eggs because you think it's better for the animal, I mean, like, I'm sure it is. Like, they get a little bit more social time, but I mean, they're still living in a giant cage. They're not running free on the grass. So just make sure when you go look at that, like, you're not just visualizing.
Right. They're like stuck in tiny cages kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, exactly.
Not the stereotype.
Right. Okay, so let's go over to our last environmental. Actually, we have 2 more, but we'll kind of cover them at the same time. Okay. The environmental last environmental comment. Sorry, I was reading it. Okay. Is from Christina Hood, and it says that all non-organic growing practices are harmful to the environment. Conventional growers do not engage in any resource-saving techniques such as no-till.
Wow.
So,
I mean, I guess.
A couple problems with that.
Yeah.
First of all, and we know it's not towards her, but towards the person that told her this.
Yes.
The problem with that is that it goes back to the whole organic stigma. The organic grow
it's better.
It's better. It's healthier for the environment. That you know, by growing organically, you're growing more naturally, which means you're not putting all these chemicals into the ground and all that stuff. Which sounds good on the surface until you start breaking it down. Yeah. And
let's break it down.
Right. So if you go into the conventional grower side of it, it's pretty easy to see that if you combine when I say conventional, I'm talking about GMOs, pesticide use, antibiotic use, basic use of less natural methods. Gotcha. Is what the conventional definition is. Right. And so if we go into the GMO side of that, there are a lot of GM plants that are genetically modified to basically capture nitrogen from the air and plant it back into the ground. That's a perfect example of how a conventional crop is used to actually better the environment rather than the organic counterpart to that, which wouldn't do anything to the environment. It actually might take more away from it. Mm-hmm. So, and I can understand the whole bleeding the earth with pesticides thing, and that it's not good, but it's not to the degree that they think it is. We're not just pouring pesticides out on the soil constantly. It's more of like a when we have to, we do it kind of thing, and it's not severe enough to warrant any major issues. But
and it's there to save the food too,
right?
Or the crop that's being grown, because if you have a pest that eats half of your crop, that's half of whatever you invested and the money you're going to get back out of it gone.
Right. Yeah. And it's not that, like, because I hear all the time that, like, farmers do, like, they use pesticides because, you know, people like to act like farmers use pesticides whenever they want, and it's really not the case. They use them because they absolutely have to. It's like their last resort kind of deal. Because
it's extra money they have to spend.
Yeah, they have to spend more money because that pest is destroying their livelihood to a degree that's unstoppable for their current method. And so it's kind of, when you think about it that way, that doesn't warrant enough use of a pesticide to cause massive environmental damage. And I'm sure there's some for excessive use, if people overuse it and abuse it, it happens. But to suggest that all conventional growers are just destroying the earth with their methods, that's just, it's not factually honest.
Right.
So.
Well, and to look at it this way, I mean, a farmer can put a pesticide down if they're trying to prevent a pest, I would think.
Right.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're right.
Okay, so they use it to prevent a pest, and if their crop is being harmed by a pest, like you just said, then they also put a pesticide down. But that's extra money out of their pocket.
Yeah.
And they are trying to save their crop. And so it's not just, we're going to dump this all over our crop because we really feel like it. Everybody's trying to save money and everybody's trying to spend it wisely. And so they only do it if they have to.
Right. And so to finish up, kind of branching off that topic, to finish up with the environmental section of our comments, going back to that one I was talking about earlier with pesticides-induced asthma. Mm-hmm. So that, I'm going to kind of branch it out again to the whole ag causes health problems thing. So asthma, cancer, valley fever, all that kind of stuff. We're going to cover that very briefly. But that idea that pesticides cause damage to consumers, whether it be they consumed it from the product or being around the, like, you know, how you can't spray a field within a certain distance of a school, and, you know, there's regulations set for that kind of stuff. So the claim that there's a lot of, like, people getting cancer, getting asthma, getting valley fever from conventional farming practices, farmers are smarter than that. Yeah. And that kind of goes back to our comment we talked about last episode, where people think that farmers are dumb or that they're ill-educated. Farmers do their research, and they do, like, a lot of research. Like, they know their stuff before they even put anything in the ground, because if it's like a, you know, a big gamble, and farmers are gambling enough. Like, they gamble with everything.
Seriously.
But if they have to put even more of a gamble on whether or not something is going to work on their product, and there's a chance it might hurt somebody in the process, they're not going to do it.
Right.
Because they can't afford to.
Well, and think about it this way. Farmers feed the world, but they're also feeding their families.
Right.
So if they are willing to harm their family, then they are willing to harm you, but that's not the case.
And anyone who knows a farmer knows that they're not going to harm their own family. Like, family's everything to them.
Right? And they're eating the same food too. Why would they want to harm themselves?
Yeah. Like, I heard this theory that people think that GMOs are dangerous because farmers are going to weaponize them.
What?
I was like, do you realize that they have to eat those too? like I'm gonna poison all the crops that I have to also eat.
Oh my gosh.
It's like slipping poison in somebody's drink, but you don't know which drink they're gonna take, so you just poison all of them. Like, you have to poison yourself in the process to kill them. Like, that's just, you're shooting yourself in the foot to shoot somebody else in the foot. Like, this doesn't make sense.
If you walk into the grocery store and if you think, man, like, I don't know if this is gonna be safe for me to eat, think about the farmer who grew that, because they're gonna pick it off the shelf too. Right.
It's just, it's people think that farmers, like, have, like, their own little subsection of food that they grow for themselves. No, they grow their own food, and they eat the food that they give you.
They grow it for everybody.
Like,
including themselves.
Yeah, and so it's just, so that's a...
Think about that the next time you go in the grocery store.
Right. So, let's move on. We're running a little tight on time. We might have to have part 3, because we're running a little tight. We still have a lot of stuff to talk about.
All right.
I did not think it was going to take this long.
Okay.
So yeah, we might even have part 3 for this episode. So let's go.
Dang. Maybe we can find more, like, myths to bust.
We might have to turn this into a whole series of ag Mythbusters.
You're right.
But yeah. So I'm going to go back to organic again, because we were trying to get through today's theme. Our word of the day is organic. So we're going through all
we didn't really cover it last episode.
No, we missed it, and that was kind of a big topic, and a lot of people wanted to hear about organic stuff, so it's kind of important that we cover it in full detail this episode and relate it to everything. Yes. So one that is talked about a lot, and Linda Tenbrick, Mariana Santos Genter, sorry if I'm pronouncing your names wrong, by the way, and Joseph Kilaihi, and the guy I pronounced wrong last time. They all said the same thing, and that's that organic food does not use chemicals. And that is a big myth. I haven't been doing the myth-busting slap. I just noticed that.
Okay, well, you've been doing a lot, so just do one big one. Oh, my.
Myth busted.
Busted.
But yeah, so there's like 3 or 4 comments on whether or not organic is allowed to use chemicals, whether or not it's allowed to use pesticides, if they can use anything to get rid of their pests.
Mm-hmm. That's a lot of government regulation, I would say. They are allowed to use it, obviously, in moderation. Same thing with conventional farmers.
Right.
Like we said earlier, you can't just dump all of your pesticide on your crop.
Nor would that be a smart idea anyway. But
we also kind of mentioned this earlier a little bit. Most of them do have to be organic compounds.
Right.
They can use synthetics, but it's definitely even smaller in moderation.
Yeah.
Or even a smaller amount. So, they're still used. It's not like you just go to see organic and it's this perfectly produced food that just came out of the ground and it was
do you know the chances of that food surviving?
I'm an amazing organic tomato and I just showed up here, so eat me. That's not how that works.
No. So, yeah. No, there's a common counter argument to organic, and that's that all of the food is probably, going to kill you because there's no chemicals being used on it.
Yeah.
That's not true. Organic food can use chemicals in very, very small amounts, which still poses a safety risk to a degree, but at the same time, it wouldn't even hit the shelf if it was unsafe. But going back to it...
Everything goes through a process.
Organic does not get this... It gets this halo effect for not using anything synthetic or any pesticides of any kind. It's all natural, just like how the Native Americans grew it. No, that's not how that works. Sorry.
And it's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable because... we're doing the same thing, just more, and it's coming out better. And it's just not... So, yeah, no, myth busted. Organic food does not... Or organic food does use pesticides and chemicals, just in much smaller amounts. So, there you go.
Well, if you think about it this way, I'm sure you've milked a cow before.
Oh, yeah.
But for those of you who have not, we have this teat dip that goes on their teats before they get milked. And so you just boom, 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 boom. It cleans off all the bacteria, gets all the dirt off, so then that doesn't go into the milk. And it has iodine in it. Iodine's a chemical.
Yep.
They also put it on the navel after the calf is born to seal up the navel so that no bacteria can get into the animal.
Right.
That's a chemical.
Right.
It's used every single day on the dairy.
And it's a chemical that's used to make the food safer rather than more unsafe.
Yes.
So it's...
I'm glad that I just thought about that. That was a really good example.
That's a really good example. I didn't think about that.
The food safer. And there's also a post dip that gets put on.
Yep.
So after the milking unit comes off the animal and before she goes back to go eat, there's a teat dip that goes on the outside. And at this point, after she gets milked out, her sphincter muscle, new word of the day if you've never heard that one before, it's called sphincter. It's this little ring-shaped muscle at the end of the teat.
Right.
Takes about 30 minutes to close back up. And so at that point, while the cows are being milked, the feeder comes out, puts feed out. Cows go back and they start eating. Because after you produce all that milk, man, apparently you are hungry. So they put on this post-dip so then no bacteria and no insects can go and harm the teat at all or make it infected. So just another way that iodine is used on the dairy, and it's a very important chemical that is used daily, multiple times a day.
No, definitely. So I just counted, we have 16 more myths to bust.
Ooh, okay.
So...
do we stop here and then do the next 16 next week? I'm
thinking so, because I feel like we've covered about maybe 20 myths per episode. That seems like a moderate number.
All right.
So 16 will probably just be like a little bit of a shorter episode, and we can just knock them all out and add in a couple of our own myths that we've found. Because I really thought that we could knock all the rest of them out in one day, because I was reading through, I was like, this isn't that many. A lot of these are the same,
it's a lot.
But there's so much.
Nope,
you guys had a lot of good myths. So,
yeah, and thank you guys for all of your myths to bust.
It was really funny.
Please bring some more.
I was asking, when I posted this, the first part of this, I was like, hey, give us more myths to bust. And I was like, why is no one sending in more myths? And then I realized it's because we have enough myths for 3 episodes they gave us. They don't need us to have more myths for a while.
They already knew we had enough.
They already knew we were going to have plenty. So good on you guys for seeing what I couldn't.
Way to talk to consumers and listen. Way to listen.
Way to listen. So so just to give you guys a little, what to expect next in the next episode, we're going over. We have one more GMO myth. It's about GMO milk. So we're gonna be covering that one next time.
Also a myth.
Also, we've got 2 more organic questions, one on home remedies and one on organic products from China.
We went through a lot of organic stuff.
A lot of organic.
All right.
We have 2 on workers, about ag exploiting their workers and illegals working in agriculture. We have...
those are going to be good ones next week.
Oh, yeah.
I'm excited for that.
We have 3... we have 4 on farmers are bad. Actually, 3. I forgot to check one off. My bad. Large farms are bad. All farmers are large corporations, and farmers are rich and have a lot of expensive toys, which we actually covered in the last episode.
We did cover that.
So we might not go over that one again. Okay. But we covered that last episode. So we actually only have 2 left. So and it has to do with large farms and factory farming and stuff.
Cool.
And then we have
the bald eagle one.
The bald eagle one.
That'll be something to look forward to.
That's
all we're gonna say about it. It's a bald eagle myth.
The bald eagle myth. Chemicals are bad, and
chemicals are bad. I just explained why chemicals are not bad.
We actually might cross that one off because we covered that one a lot today.
At least 1 chemical is not bad.
So for that one, we're probably gonna get... So Eric, Karen, Kirsch, thanks for submitting that one. We're gonna cross that one off the list because we did cover it a lot today. And then in animal rights, we have factory farms, pus/blood in milk, and male calves are killed immediately.
Gross.
So that's
false.
And that is the last of our myths. So really, it's gonna be like 12 now that I've crossed a bunch off.
Okay, but that'll be a full episode.
That'll be a full episode.
Those are good myths.
And those are some good ones. Yeah, to finish on those is gonna be strong.
For those.
And we might even have some more for you. So make sure you tune into the next episode. Check out what we cover, and if you have any more myths you think of or anything else you want us to cover in more detail,
let us know.
Let us know. Go on Facebook, on Instagram, Twitter. Comment on this video. Any way you can get a hold of us, make sure you do it, and we'll be sure to cover it. And if we can get enough myths per week, maybe we'll make a little mini series of ag Mythbusters.
I would like that.
That'd be a lot of fun.
Yes, please find some more myths, please.
Yes. So we got part 3 of MythBusters coming out next week. The following week we might have that food safety episode if we can knock that out soon. And so I hope you guys enjoyed listening to our myth busting. I forgot doing the last one. Myth busted. So thank all you for so much for tuning in, for submitting your awesome myths, and
way to go.
Yeah, those are some good ones. We had some really good conversations. So hope you guys all enjoyed, and hope you tune into the next episode. We'll catch you over there, and don't forget, if you ate today, thank a farmer.